same company to do certain things like buy backpacks and wallets and various things for a while, and I'm going to give them a plug here. Their name is Recycled Firefighter. You can find them online, and the guy who does these products is very careful to make products that are going to last the test of time. They're going to last a while. The result is that he charges more for them, and this is typically what happens when you talk about things like clothing and things like wallets and backpacks and so forth. He does things like not let the seams on the inside of a backpack just be loose. He actually puts something around them to make it so that they are not just loose, right? So that the backpack or the wallet will last that much longer. But you have to understand that there are a lot of products that do not work this way. The way they work is they've got this concept called planned obsolescence, which basically makes it so that those things will wear out over the course of time. And that's beside the fact that they naturally do. If you look at a 1929 automobile, if it's been restored even, you will find that that thing would have lasted the test of time if it had been kept up. That's the reality of that. Newer automobiles, that's really not the case for, and that's one more consideration when we talk about this subject, and it's a question. Cheap electric cars on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Friday the 18th of March of 2022. Excuse me, I've got a little bit of indigestion going on. Welcome to everyone who's here on Rumble, the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page. That's the Kurt's Religion and Politics page on Facebook. Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com, minds.com, MINDS, particularly on the Kurt's Religion and Politics group there, but sometimes you'll see me elsewhere, on Parler, on Gab, on Twitter, or wherever else you happen to be seeing me today. And again, the subject for today is cheap electric cars, ? And I'm going to go ahead and go through my notes very quickly to give you a baseline for discussion. And then I'm going to probably try and expound on that a little bit as we actually get into the sort of free time. Question one is, are electric cars really cheaper to run than their fossil fuel counterparts? Next question would be, are folks considering how much the electricity to charge them costs? To charge those electric cars, right? When you consider the sticker price, this is question 3, how long does it take for them to start, quote, being cheap, end of quote? How is the electricity upon which they run generated? This is the short list of questions I have about electric vehicles. There are certainly more. An example would be the infamous, what's the environmental impact of producing and, worse yet, disposing of the batteries most of them use? What's the environmental impact of that? Of course, you can add things like, will it end up costing me that after running the battery? This is a little clunky, but let me try this again. Of course, you can add things like, will it end up costing me that after the battery more or less runs all the way down, making it so that I have to wait to charge back up after to use the car again. So let's say, very quickly, let's say I get on a 500-mile trip, and in 300 miles, my battery, or even 400 miles, my battery runs down. Now I've got 100 miles less to go, and I have to charge my battery. How long does it take, and what does that cost me in time and effort, and so forth? Hybrids can take care of the latter, but then you're not really off fossil fuels at all. This is particularly true when you consider using most charging stations means, quote, fueling, end of quote, the vehicle in question with electricity produced by those terrible petroleum or coal products. What makes this even worse? The inevitable loss that must occur when that electricity is, quote, transmitted from, end of quote, generation facilities to homes or other places where charging occurs. You can't avoid it. There will be loss. It's true that gasoline, petrol, for some of my friends overseas, must be transported to service stations. It's fair to say there are involved costs in that. Certainly there are. That's true. It's equally proper to say that petroleum products must be taken out of the ground and refined. So there are costs and environmental costs there, certainly. Even so, it's more than a little illusory to point to electric cars as somehow more efficient. On another front, like it or not, the average buyer can't afford to buy a, quote, normal car at present. $46,000 sticker shock or whatever it is the average cost. Considering the fact that you tend to pay a premium for ones that don't use gas, they pretty definitely can't manage to swing a loan for that. And even if they can, the cost per month is so prohibitively high as to make it more or less impossible for them to make the payments. And it's a fixed cost. If I want, I can drive my vehicle fewer miles by curtailing leisure activities or working from home or whatever various things are available to me. Can I pay part of a payment for my car in a given month? For that month? No. Want to understand why I don't view electric vehicles as some sort of bargain or hope for the future? I hope you can see that it's not that hard to comprehend based on what I've said to this point. What makes things even sadder? I've probably forgotten points that really bear mentioning. Sorry to tell you this, but those trying to float the idea of the average Joe buying an electric car seem to have very little understanding exactly who they're speaking about. Think I'm mistaken in my view? I'd love for you to tell me exactly how. So that's my notes. Look, you can make every argument you want for electric cars. You can make them sound lovely. That's wonderful. But the reality is, first of all, you have to make the electric car. And you have limited resources to do that, by the way, because they require whatever they require to make the batteries. Right? So you have to make those batteries, and by the way, a lot of the materials for those batteries come from places like China, which is not a great thing all on its own, but they're rare minerals and so forth in some instances, and they're potentially environmentally harmful, particularly if you have to dispose of them. When batteries go bad or cells go bad or whatever it is, you have to dispose of them. You may have to rehabilitate them at times. You could potentially overcharge, and I don't know. I'm assuming they have charging systems that are, quote, smart enough supposedly to make it so that that's less of a thing, but there's a possibility for you to overcharge them and therefore maybe lead to battery memory, which is something that everything seems to suffer from to some degree at least. Maybe it's less on these cars because they've got better charging systems that are smart enough to not charge when the battery is more or less full. You have to worry about the range on them, and you can't just pull into a gas station and fill it up. You have to take it somewhere to charge it. And that means, first of all, getting it somewhere to charge it. And that means, second of all, finding somewhere to charge it. And the more out in the boonies, the more in less populous areas you are, the less you're going to find charging stations for such things. So that's another consideration. So there are all of these considerations that make you actually ask the question, are electric cars effectively inexpensive? And the answer, in my view, is no. The answer is no. Is that potentially going to get better? Some, but you're still going to have certain things that are going to remain as problems that you're going to have to deal with. Again, my example would be mining those materials that make it possible to make those batteries, making the batteries, disposing of the batteries, transmission of electric through typically fossil fuels, coal, and similar, which is the majority of transmission in the United States. Those that aren't are primarily nuclear, and the smallest portion are things like solar and windmill power. They're the small portions, and there's a good reason for that. If you look, as I said before, at what happened to Texas recently, you'll begin to understand why. So you have to really ask yourself the question, cheap electric cars, is that really a thing? And I have to tell you, I don't think the answer, particularly at this point, and maybe ever, is yes. I think the answer to that may not be what you think if you really start to look at it. And again, if you look at people who are on fixed incomes and so forth, they're definitely not going to be able to afford that sort of thing. And so trying to force them into that mode is a really, really bad idea. Okay, I need to go ahead and wrap things up. This has been the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, Tom Curtin. Today is Friday, the 18th of March of 2022. We didn't mess it up like yesterday. That means that is the Sabbath at the sundown today will start for those who observe it. That will also mean that tomorrow is Saturday, the 19th of March of 2022. The remainder of that Sabbath until sundown on Saturday, as I get it. Again, for those who are observing the Sabbath, hope you have a good Sabbath. Thank you for having come here, whether it's on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page. That's the Kurt's Religion and Politics page on Facebook, on kurtzreligionandpolitics.locals.com, on Minds, minds.com, and that would be typically on the Kurt's Religion and Politics group there, on Parler, on Gab, on Twitter, wherever else you happen to have found me. Remember that you can leave me feedback of various kinds to let me know how I'm doing. On Rumble, you can leave me a boxing glove. You can leave me a plus or minus on pretty much any other social media type site, and some of the video sites you can, I think all of them maybe, you can leave me a like, dislike, thumbs up, thumbs down, something like that. On, I think it's CloudHub, you have the ability, if you choose to do so, to leave me other types of feedback, and that's wonderful if you choose to do so. I'm always interested to see what you think, and I think probably commenting on my content is a good way to do that. Remember, if your comments are either advertisement or seem to me like they're going to be harmful to other people, they're probably going to go away. Otherwise, even if they leave me scratching my head, I'll probably leave them. If I feel it's reasonable, I will reply to something that you said. I may leave some sort of feedback to let you know that, in fact, I did see your comment, though I know it's hard to tell exactly who liked or disliked a given comment on certain platforms, but I will potentially leave a feedback if I feel like it's useful in helping you to know that I've seen what you've had to say. The subject for today has been cheap electric cars, and the subject for tomorrow is another question, feel the burn, and it has to do with people who think they're burning other people with wise guy type comments various places. And I want to discuss that a little because I see a lot of times when maybe that doesn't go quite like people thought that it did. Hope you're having a good day today. Hope everything is going well for you, and hopefully we will see you again on Saturday's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This podcast was created on Friday, the 18th of March of 2022. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.